0526 hours. The fog above Ukraine's northeastern border looked calm, almost harmless. A quiet sky, a routine morning, nothing unusual. And that false sense of comfort was exactly the point, because Ukraine wasn't preparing for a normal day. They were preparing to erase a Russian aircraft from existence. For nearly 2 weeks, Russia believed they owned the air. Every sunrise, a strike jet swept across this corridor. A Su-34, sleek, deadly, carrying glide bombs designed to crush defensive trenches and every soldier inside them. It had flown this same path like a commuter road, bombing Ukrainian positions and vanishing before anyone could react. The pilot had reason to be confident. For 12 days straight, the sky stayed completely silent. Not a ping on his radar, not a threat warning, not a single missile trail. His routine became muscle memory, and muscle memory can kill. Russia assumed Ukraine's defenses had been pulled back. They assumed victory. They assumed wrong. Beneath that fog, deep inside a silent forest, a trap had been waiting. A trap worth millions of dollars, assembled piece by piece with one brutal purpose. 2 Buk-M1 missile batteries. Their camouflage so perfectly blended that even AI-enhanced drones struggled to notice disturbed leaves. A mobile man-pads unit, rotating positions every half hour, always hidden under the tree line. And the most important piece, passive radar, watching without a sound. No transmissions, no emissions, no trace. Just listening, tracking, recording. Every habit the Su-34 pilot relied on had already been analyzed by Ukrainian intelligence. Takeoff timing, entry point, altitude changes, jamming rhythm, bomb release dive angle, how aggressively he turned when nervous, how casually he flew when he wasn't. And this morning, he wasn't nervous, not even slightly. At 0524, the familiar roar of twin engines finally appeared on Ukrainian sensors. The commander gave a single order that echoed through every concealed foxhole. No radar, no mistakes, let him come in. The jet crossed the border, smooth, confident, not a moment of hesitation. A flying bomb truck worth tens of millions gliding straight into a precise, invisible box drawn by Ukrainian mathematicians and artillery officers. The pilot tilted his jet exactly 22 degrees right, the same banking maneuver he always used before releasing glide bombs. The same move Ukraine had predicted days earlier. He reduced altitude for accuracy and unknowingly committed to the kill zone. No warning tones, no threats, no escape. The Su-34 was now inside a meticulously engineered execution corridor, and the soldiers below, silent as ghosts, waited for their commander to speak again. They had one chance, one moment, one perfect shot that would change this sky forever. Would the Russian pilot realize the danger in time? He had less than 5 minutes left to live, and not a single clue. Subscribe if you haven't yet, because what happens in the next seconds will shock you. 0529 hours. The Russian pilot leveled out, preparing for the usual bombing run. His radar narrowed to focus on ground targets, reducing his situational awareness to almost zero. The fog still clung to the trees, stripping the landscape of detail. It felt calm, too calm. Far below, Ukrainian screens glowed a cold green. Passive radar and infrared confirmed everything. Speed, altitude, flight vector. The jet was exactly where it needed to be. Still, the commander didn't speak. The seconds kept falling away like grains of sand in a countdown the pilot didn't know he was losing. He toggled the jamming pod, cycling through pre-programmed frequencies. It was meant to confuse radars, but Ukraine had already studied that pattern to exhaustion. Every pulse was predictable, every deception already mapped. His greatest defense had become a vulnerability. 053017, a single tone chirped in the pilot's headset. A brief radar lock alert. Just a blip. A half heartbeat. Then silence again. He frowned, checked the instruments. Everything looked normal. Sensors glitching again, he muttered. If there was danger, it'd still be ringing. That tiny assumption cost him everything, because at that exact moment, hundreds of meters below him, the silence finally broke. Illuminate. 4 seconds. Ukraine's 36D6 radar powering up for only 4 seconds was no mistake. It was the ultimate act of discipline. enough to get every targeting solution needed, not long enough for Russia to react. The lock was confirmed instantly. The commander gave the order the entire forest had been holding their breath to hear. Fire 1, Buk-M1. Battery Alpha launched the first missile, a bright comet slicing upward. Alarms in the cockpit screamed. The pilot yanked left and punched out flares, a skilled maneuver he had practiced hundreds of times. The first missile missed, and that was part of the design, because as the jet rolled to evade, its entire underbelly, the part most vulnerable to radar, flashed wide open to the second hidden launcher. Fire 2, Buk-M1 Battery Bravo fired from a completely unexpected angle, a 90-degree cross-attack vector no Russian defense AI had predicted. The missile shot upward at Mach 3, unseen and almost unheard. The pilot's blood turned to ice. Second launch, where from? He shoved the nose down hard, trying to break line of sight and force the missile into ground clutter. But this was exactly what Ukraine needed him to do. Dropping altitude pushed him straight into range of the final layer of the trap. Under the canopy, a Ukrainian man-pads operator already had thermal lock. The trigger clicked. Stinger away. The third missile erupted upward from the trees. 3 weapon systems, 3 angles, 3 timelines converging on one doomed aircraft. In those final moments, the sky itself felt like it was closing around the Russian jet, and there was nowhere left to run. 0531 hours. The Russian pilot was fighting physics itself. He threw the Su-34 into a violent dive, engines howling, wings cracking under pressure. The horizon spun sideways through his canopy. He had seconds, maybe less, to cheat death. But the trap was already closing. The man-pads missile reached him first. It struck the belly, right where hydraulic lines and electrical bundles fed the flaps and stabilizers. There was a flash of white light followed by a muffled thud. The jet lurched, controls stuttering. Warning lights flared red across the cockpit. Control failure, left stabilizer damaged, the co-pilot shouted over the alarms. He tried to pull up. The aircraft refused to listen. Before they could even breathe, the second missile arrived. Buk Bravo's warhead slammed into the left wing root, exactly where Ukrainian engineers predicted the stress load would be fatal. Fire burst outward, shredding metal like paper. The remaining wing twisted and began tearing away in chunks. The left engine flamed out instantly. Inside the cockpit, panic was turning into horror. We are losing the wing. We are spinning. We are spinning. The Su-34 rolled uncontrollably. The pilot reached for the ejection handle, but centrifugal force pinned his arm. The jet was no longer flying. It was falling, and Ukraine was not finished. The first Buk missile, now looping back on heat signature, returned like a ghost. Flames from the damaged engine painted a perfect target. The missile tracked effortlessly and detonated behind the cockpit, blasting apart the tail section and severing everything that kept the jet stable. The aircraft entered a flat spin, debris raining down like a tumbling meteor shower. On the ground, Ukrainian soldiers heard the roar change pitch. That was the sound of victory. No celebration, not yet. They watched. They listened. The jet spiraled downward, trailing a thick column of black smoke, carving a scar into the sky. Trees bent under the shock wave as the fuselage hit the earth, disappearing in a violent plume of dirt, fire, and torn steel. Silence followed, not peace. The silence of a job completed. Within minutes, a Ukrainian reconnaissance squad moved out. They marched through the mist with purpose, following pre-planned approach routes. Every step cautious. Any modern jet may carry self-destruct triggers or timed explosives. They reached the wreck. Flames crawled along fragments of the wing. The cockpit was crushed into the soil. There were no survivors. The team worked fast. They pried open panels and cut out sensitive systems. The mission computer, the jamming module, memory storage, targeting optics. They bagged each part in anti-static sleeves. Not a word was spoken. Every soldier understood the importance, because this victory was not just about a kill, it was about what came next. That data could expose Russian technology, vulnerabilities, signal patterns. All of it would make the next kill easier. The fog settled again, the smell of burning fuel mixed with damp pine. Ukraine had waited 12 days for this single moment. and they were already preparing to do it again. The wreckage still smoked as the reconnaissance team pulled what they needed and disappeared back into the tree line. Leaves fell slowly through the fog, carried by the same soft wind that had hidden the missiles seconds earlier. No one spoke. There was no celebration, no loud victory chant, just a sharp, quiet focus. Because this was a win measured not in noise, but in silence. Those data modules the team collected, packed in anti-static sleeves and tucked under jackets, were now more dangerous than any missile. Engineers would study every burned circuit, every melted wire, every encrypted memory chip. They wanted to understand every Russian secret hidden inside that wreck. Every weakness uncovered today would be a weapon tomorrow. At the field command post, officers gathered around screens replaying the engagement. They examined the timeline with surgical precision. How long the radar stayed off, how long it flashed, how tightly each missile converged. Nothing was left unmeasured. Their conclusion was simple. This was not luck. This was mastery. Russia didn't just lose a multi-million-dollar fighter jet. They lost the comfort they had built over weeks, a comfort that now looked like foolishness. From now on, Russian pilots will rethink every decision. Fly higher or get hit from below. Fly lower and fall into man-pads traps. Change routes, but risk unknown defenses. Every new mission becomes slower, riskier, more draining. That hesitation is the real damage done today. On the radar screen, static faded back to normal. No more engine signatures. No more jamming pulses. The forest returned to the way it had been before the kill. Quiet, watching, waiting. Buk crews powered down and recamouflaged their launch rails so precisely that satellites might never notice they had fired. The man-pads team crawled to fresh dugouts, rifles, tucked under their bodies to avoid sensor flare. The passive radar operators leaned back, eyes red from staring at faint signals for hours. No one allowed themselves to relax. The commander stood with arms crossed. He didn't smile. He didn't congratulate anyone. He simply gave the only order that mattered: stay ready, again. Because the real target wasn't the jet that just fell. It was the pattern that had allowed it to fly there. Ukraine had just proved a rule of modern warfare. Silence is a weapon. You don't need to show strength every minute. You just wait until the enemy believes you are gone. And then, in a single calculated strike, you erase everything they trusted. 12 days of silence, 3 seconds of fire, one more Russian jet erased. Thank you for watching this combat breakdown. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next trap, because the sky above Ukraine is still hunting.